to the June Phase 1 Motorist Modernization Advisory Board meeting. We'll start with roll call of the members. Deb? Here. Ed?
Here.
Pace? April? Kevin?
Present.
William?
Here.
And Lisa?
Yes.
All right, we have quorum. So at this time, we'll go through the meeting minutes from our last meeting, which should be a part of your packet. The last meeting minutes are from April 9th. Rachel?
Good afternoon, everyone. The last meeting was held on April 9th. The March 12th meeting minutes were reviewed and approved. Eileen Calvo presented an IB&B update report for Phase 1. Craig Benner presented an OCM update report for Phase 1. There's a brief stakeholder outreach at the bottom of page 1, discussing the My D&B portal focus groups. There was no policy decision review at the meeting. Janice Simmons presented a Phase 1 and Phase 2 financial review. Project updates began on page 2 with DL issuance, followed by motorist maintenance and FR, My D&B portal, SIDLIS and citation processing, and the updates continued on to page 3 with an update from the renewal notification team. Coral Briggs presented an overview of the Phase 1 communications plan, which was previously approved by the ESC. There are a few questions on page 3. And then the meeting was adjourned at 1:35 p.m. And the next, at the bottom of page 3, you can see items that were included in the meeting packet prior to the meeting.
Any questions, comments, corrections?
Move to approve.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thanks. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Same sign. Thank you. We'll mark these as approved. All right. IB&B update, Arseon, Eileen, Gary.
Hi everyone. Just let me know if for some reason you can't hear me. I'm dialing in from Germany and I keep getting told that I cut in and out. So just let me know. As we start with the presentation, this is the April report, so the data as of May 15th. So risk state currently is green. Reviewed no additional facets for this period, and there are no new deficiencies identified. FTI is currently at 0.989, and there's 80% of not 80%, only 2% of tasks are scheduled late right now. Schedule variance is 4,000 hours off. Okay, we can go over to the performance indicators. This one, yeah. So right now, everything is where we would expect it to be. We'll be watching as UAT continues and just looking, making sure all the different priorities that are being undertaken by the agency are monitored and how they impact the motorist modernization project program as a whole. Okay, so you can see the bullseye is going back to the middle. We were coming out a little bit further last month, but it's coming back to the middle. The schedule variance is kind of hovering around the same amount. It was 5,000 last month, and it's 4,000 now. So it just kind of keeps hovering around the same number. And you can see the days late jumped up to 156.3 days, so we'll be monitoring that. Outside of that, I think schedule quality is the last slide to review. That one just gives you an overview of, we talked about the end of the date, the project complete date overall, but that one graph will show you what each milestone that's upcoming, what that is forecasted to be late. So project schedule quality is still great, sitting there at 94.5, so no concern with the quality of the schedule. And I believe that is all for Phase 1. We have not had any deficiencies to close or anything, so that is all Phase 1. questions?
See shaking heads, so.
All right, thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, the next two items on the agenda, we actually don't have an update. We don't have a stakeholder outreach update today, nor do we have any policy and decision items. So we'll jump down on the program update. Janice Timmons is out of the office today, but she wanted me to let you all know that we are continuing to spend on target, and we're expected to have a zero budget by the end of the fiscal year. So we're right on track to be able to do that. Any questions about that? All right, moving into the project updates. We're going to start first with DL issuance. Joe?
Sure. So for deal issuance, I want to point out in the team profile one note here. For the number of testers, we have 2.5 FTEs. What that number doesn't reflect is the folks that we actually have testing down in South Florida. So we have actually rolled out our state environment UAT to the offices down there, and we have, with those folks testing, we have over 12 people who are actually testing in UAT, which is great news. Looking at their enterprise testing summary for performance testing, we had 39 scripts that we've identified that we want to test for deal issuance Orion as well as deal issuance batch jobs, and we've completed writing all of those test scripts, performance test scripts, so we are ready to start executing performance testing, per the plan. Taking a look at the middle there, the testing summary, from a UAT test scenario perspective, just a couple of notes. The delta there is a result of we added several test scripts to UAT. Those were a result of change requests that we've been processing over the last couple of months, resulted in 2 additional scripts being added. So you see we've not really made a lot of improvement from a UAT test script perspective, but if you drop down to the bottom part of that block, you can see that we've actually closed quite a few bugs that were impacting both the sprint as well as UAT. So our bug count's going down, which will help us eventually close out those scripts. That's really was the holdup, is you got to close out the bugs before you can close out the scripts. So that's been the focus, trying to work through those bugs. We do have one story that we still have open to close out, our remaining milestone. We are doing a demo of that story here in about 22 minutes, and that will hopefully close out all of our remaining development work that had not previously been signed off. Taking a look at those key dependencies and assumptions, a couple things to point out is that we are dependent on Informatica two-way synchronization for some of our UAT scripts. We actually have 4 UAT scripts that are right now blocked because of the need for two-way synchronization. Let me explain that. So there are a couple of scripts that deal with testing, that when we do something in deal issuance, Orion, that it flows down, whether that's a motor vehicle check, whether that's DL check, whether that's CDL medical information, making sure that those other systems display that information. And for that all to work, the two-way synchronization Informatica is doing with the database update has to be working successfully to move the data so we can make sure that flows down. So until that's successfully working, we won't be able to test those particular scripts. From a key risk and issue perspective, a couple things to point out from the short the 2 developers. One new developer actually started today, so he's at his workstation filling out his paperwork right now so that his badge will work tomorrow when he comes in. So that's good news. The other position was filled internally, so there's a new job posting that went out, doesn't close until the 16th of June for that other open position. We are still continuing to work with various vendors on different things. We're working with NCOA vendors. We made some changes to the layout of that particular job, and so we're trying to get those updates made by them so we can complete that testing in UAT. We are working with various stakeholders for batch transcript. In fact, we have been working with Peneus, if I'm saying that right, County today, exchanging multiple emails, trying to get them up and running. The other thing to point out is the VLS 3.2 update. Operations is currently working on that, and that will go out to production, be deployed this month. So once they're complete, they're actually starting to work on the Orion version of that VLS 3.2 code. We will be submitting the change request to make those changes ourselves and roll those changes out later. Moving to the next slide. So we are ready from a testing perspective, and that's because, as I mentioned, we have the one story that we need to close out from a milestone perspective, as well as we, if you look down that forecasted date box in the lower right-hand corner, we did miss our UAT completion date, which was the 5th of June. We are obviously still testing UAT and missed miss that date and still have quite a few stories to close out. The box in the middle depicts some of the pending change requests we have that still need to be submitted and worked at some point. Our key implementation activities that we're really focusing on, so the third-party cashiering testing, members of SEU as well as several of the devs working on some tools that would enable testing. I've been working vigorously with the different vendors as well as counties, getting them set up so that they can test third-party cashiering in the test environment. And that continues, we're still getting those logins and roles set up for them. All right, any questions for me for deal issuance?
All right, before we go to the next person, I would like, for the purpose of minutes, April is on the phone, so she's attending via phone. Scott, Wilderness Maintenance, FR.
Thank you, Kristen. Going over the team profile, we see that we've got 6 developers. Come the end of June, you'll see it start off. Come the end of June, we're down to possibly 3. We're working to mitigate that. There's a risk open. Number 28, you'll see key risk and issues. If we drop down with the number of bugs that we're receiving still, not only from our team, but from the other teams that are using motorist maintenance and user acceptance testing, that may impact our completion of user acceptance testing and performance testing. Moving into the enterprise testing summary, the performance test scenarios that we had originally was 31 since we reported to you guys, gals. It's dropped down to 24. The reason for that, some of the active batch jobs that were created under our rewrite were already modernized and pushed in production, so the team decided that those didn't need to be tested, but they will be tested amongst those other items that are targeted, so we'll keep our eyes open just in case that impacts. So far we've got 9 tests that were written, we're ready for execution. We need to finish the rest of those as we are late on that one. Moving into the test summary in the center, you'll see that we got scripts pending execution, there's 3. And then of course, being executed is 29, and at 29 that we have on there, we're impacted by some of the high critical bugs listed below. As soon as we mitigate those, we'll actually address those and start to burn those down. You'll also notice the UAT testing scenario, there was 30 when we started. 2 were added due to the change requests that we just recently had finished during the change request iteration period. None of the scripts need to be developed, which that's a good sign. They're all ready to go, but we want to closely monitor that completion. You'll notice that we had 2 listed, and it changed to 0, and that was because of the change request that modified that process, so they wanted to retest that. I don't blame them, I support that, the SEU that is. So key dependencies and assumptions that we're faced with, the quick UAT bug triage and resolution to blocking bugs. If you notice, there's parts of motorist maintenance that was just lifted and brought into the new environment. Those bugs, if they're found, we need to triage and mitigate those as they are impacting our current work. So we need to make sure we mitigate those. RAPs and CRs. Here is a very critical item that we put out there for Executive Steering Committee and you as the advisory board. If they're not critical exceptions, we keep adding them, we're going to extend our date. So there's one of those items that we're truly making sure that we don't just put them out there and just to get them done because they're good to do. Stability of the enterprise services while UAT bugs and performance issues are being fixed. We want to make sure that when the environment's going down, we're not testing and reporting erroneous bugs. And then of course, one of the issues that we had since probably early last year, or end of last year, excuse me, is the timely completion of structural testing. This still pulls our testers and our developers. So that's something we've got to be mindful of. I think that we're closing it slowly. I think in the next week or 2 we'll have some positive information to report to you. But those companies that are still out there, we need to make sure that we're providing support. Next slide, Coral, if there's any questions on that. Okay. The business actions we're showing that are yellow. The key items are when we get those requirement questions that are blocking the bugs from being picked up, resolved. That slows us down, so we're working the best, triaging, processing that the best we can as a team. Development, UAT, and performance testing. Last time we reported to you, we're about 2 months behind, and so we entered this phase of the schedule about 2 months behind, so that's inherently we're behind. And then testing as well, with all the current obligations, they are behind as well to complete UAT and performance testing. You'll notice that in the center, we've got change requests that were pending from last ESC. Currently, they actually, ESC kind of identified that the moratorium for change requests were applied, so the good thing is we've stopped the change request process temporarily so we can mitigate the bugs. And so that's what we've got there. Our new UAT completion date is the 18th of July. And so the key implementation activities is we are working with insurance companies to load them up starting today, which is great. We're going to go through the reload and then the dailies. So that's an item that we're looking and watching closely. And then we're going to continue to support the XML structural testing as well. And then, of course, we've got to find out how many companies do we feel comfortable with when we start October 2019 to onboard. If we're good, we've got enough insurance companies, then we can move forward because there's going to be stragglers, and so how are we going to deal with that? Any questions or comments on that? No, back to you, Kristen.
Portal, Andrea?
Thank you, Kristen. The team profile, we continue to have 2 developers, and we have averaging about 4 testers, and they kind of split between the sprint work or CR work as well as the UAT. Testing, our performance testing summaries, we defined 15 scenarios that we'll be testing. Our developer has developed 8 of those test scripts. If you can look in the middle, the testing summary, if you look at the UAT, it's currently just kind of on hold. We haven't made any progress recently on that because we're focusing on finishing up the CRs and the sprint work. If you can look down, the sprint, we're pretty much keeping our bugs within good range. We've actually cleared more than what's showing on here for the sprint work. And the UAT has been kept pretty much at a low pace. We're keeping up with the bugs. The key dependencies and assumptions is any regression testing that comes from Informatica testing dependencies. Making sure that we only work on WAPs and CRs for critical exceptions. And also, we're going to be running focus groups, and so we just have to, there probably is going to come CRs from the findings of the focus group as well as from UAT. And also, the key dependencies is the revised ADA approach that has gone on with the department as a whole. And we have gotten some feedback off of that, and at first I panicked, but I was told that those bugs were not that, it's not as bad as it looked. So we're assessing what that impact is going to be. The revised key, the risk and issues for Portal, we have risk 13. The revised dates for completing CR 172 and 19 is June 21st. And if the testing for the UAT is not continued, which it hasn't been going parallel with the remaining testing, it may impact the completion date for UAT and our go live date. If you can look over to the right, the key implementation activities, and like I said, we are currently coordinating the external focus group testing, which is being done by UF, and this Saturday we'll start our first testing by that external group to determine just how user-friendly my DMV portal is, and it should end by August 2019. We have to also do some additional Bank of America testing with a new merchant ID that we have from my DMV portal to run parallel with Virtual Office. The effort to promote Salesforce in production is also a key activity for early 2020. Our forecast dates of the sprint development is completed, and we'll continue to do sprint testing, which is revised to be completed as of June 21st, and UAT completion to be as of July 3rd. As far as their traffic light, the business actions is yellow, development is green because we're complete with development, testing is red, and technical debt is green. Any questions for Portal? Thank you.
Syphilis and citation processing.
Good afternoon. For the syphilis team, our user profile, we have 2 developers assigned, and the testers or SEU have reduced to 2, although there are actually 4 testers there. We have a letters team, so the testers are working between both the syphilis and citation processing team and the letters team. Performance testing, we've identified 21 different scenarios. So far, we've developed 7 of those test scenarios, and we have not executed any of our performance testing as of yet. The testing summary for UAT, we've identified 87 different test scenarios. We've developed all of our scripts for those scenarios, and we've actually started to execute the test scripts. We've executed, we've executed 16, we've got 56 still, 56 pending, and 15 complete. As far as bugs go for the syllabus and citation processing team, we've got 1 bug that's critical and 8 medium bugs. So the team's doing really well on keeping the bugs down and also working the bugs as soon as they're assigned. For our key dependencies and assumptions, we're working in conjunction with the letters team. The letters team is actually working on the syllabus citation processing letters. And there are 48 different templates, and so we're trying to work in conjunction with the letter team to complete the testing that has to be done on the letters team as well as UAT testing on our side. Our key risk and issues, the developer resources is something that we mentioned earlier because the team, I only have 2 developers, and it's pretty extensive to test for citation processing. They have to develop flat files, and then the flat files have to be run by the developers, and then the developers have to assess what issues or errors that come back so that they can pass that information on to SEU. They're averaging, I think, between 4 to 10 files per developer per day, passing those on to the testers, and they're passing those on to the development team, and of course, like I said, there are only 2 on that team, so it makes it a little bit difficult sometimes to keep up. On the next slide, our key implementation activities right now is we're planning for a production implementation of driver school for FCCC. We're going to be implementing driver school in production for FCCC tomorrow. We're also continuing to process for UAT, process files, and we're starting to coordinate for AMBA testing, structural testing. Our business actions right now are green, development and testing are red, and our technical debt is green. Are there any questions for syllabus and citation processing? Okay, we'll go to renewals. The renewal team has identified 15 test scenarios. They have started to test. They developed 3 of those scenarios. They've executed 1, and 2 of the developed tasks are pending execution. For the renewal team, in-house SEU testing for UAT is completely done, and now we're waiting to actually produce the data so that we can continue testing with the business in UAT. So there are no bugs for that team. All the bugs have been worked, and the team is just continuing to work on end-to-end testing for the SEU unit. So the final screen for renewals. I have them all of my areas as green, but we are still in UAT. We just recently identified the business user who will perform the UAT testing, and once we have an opportunity to gather all the data, we'll continue with the final testing for the renewal team. Are there any questions?
So all of the phase 1 teams, as you can see, are really going in on their testing at this time. There's UAT, there's performance testing, where we're trying to do things like test the application to make sure that it's efficient, operates fast, and the response times are really good from a user experience perspective. And then we have some external testing that we're doing, like Scott mentioned, wrapping up on the XML testing hopefully soon here. and then kicking off the focus group related to the My DV portal. Some of the key areas that we're focused on are, because development was a little bit behind, we're having to make up ground as far as UAT is concerned. So we're working very closely with SEU to kind of make sure we understand what remains in the pipeline to be tested and to come to the same terms as far as when we'll actually be able to catch up on that. And then bugs, you heard all the team talk through their bugs, so we really want to focus and take some time to mitigate some of those critical bugs that we have to fix before we go live. So that's kind of an overall summary from a team perspective. All right, our next update is Informatica update.
Good afternoon. For Informatica, the team profile is as you see it there, but we may be attempting to, or at least it's been discussed about adding additional resources to help us out with the Informatica development. A testing summary, as you can see there, is the testing for Informatica is structured a little bit differently than the other teams because the SEU testers are testing by table and not by test scripts as they have in the other projects. So right now we have about 200 tables that need to be tested as a part of the Informatica development effort, and 16 of them have started. We haven't had an opportunity to complete any tables at this point, but the team is working on trying to close out some of the bugs. You see there's quite a few there listed, and Informatica is a vital part of the project, and so we have to make sure that the data and the synchronization is correct. But we are working on trying to fix some of those bugs. And for our key dependencies there, we had an approach that we were following, but last month we had an engagement with a group called Plant Moran, and they are Informatica experts, and they came in and asked us a bunch of questions and to take a look at our process and give us their recommendation. Well, after we had a chance to talk with them and they had a chance to hear about what we were doing, they came up with some recommendations and some options, one of which we have decided to go with. So we've had a shift, we will have a shift in how we, in our approach, and so it's going to cause us to do some redesign, some rework, and to organize our work a little bit differently. So if you could go to the second slide. So right now, we are mostly red because we are going to make some changes in our approach, and that's going to cause us to go back and do some redesign and some rework, as I said. So our current forecast of development is still not certain yet because we won't have that information until we can go back and reset and do some re-estimating and then come up with timelines for completing the development. Any questions?
All right, thank you. Next, Craig will give us an OCM update.
All right, good afternoon, everybody from the OCM team. Give her a minute to pull up the slide. Slide deck.
Oh, it is.
Okay, good. Moving on to the second slide, you can see we're in green for strategy, implement change, and measure and evaluate. We're in amber for planning because we're trending late on the task to launch our Change Champion training. The planning milestone is July 31st, and Change Champion training is set for September. This shouldn't affect or diminish the efforts of the OCM plan. And the Change Champion training, what we're looking to do is incorporate more of the engagement planning activities, so that's the reason for that. The engagement plans are being developed. The ISA one is drafted. has been drafted by the OCM team and is under review by the OMM leadership team. So that task completion has been increased to 50%, and then that template will be used for the other plans. Meetings are continuing with the ISA on the knowledge transfer plan, and we've identified 37 change champions, but we still need some for some of the other departments. We had our initial meeting with FHP, but we still need to determine how many of those change champions will be needed. To enhance our communications efforts, we have a draft SharePoint page, and it's being routed right now, and it's under review, and we hope to have that up by the end of the month. Next slide. We have a couple of new OCM risks that we're addressing. The first one is the long-term owners for letters, and that is if letters don't have a owner post go live, there may not be a chance for them to remain consistent post go live. And so now we've got owners identified, and now we have a working team for those letters to create a process to be consistent post go live. And then the other risk is the business process and training is not developed for CSC to deal with the new MyDMV portal logon process. Then CNC may have difficulty with the MyDMV portal customer override and disassociation process. And so now a working group began meeting last week on that particular issue. So those are the two new risks that we have. And then the next slide. We had an opportunity to meet with Gary from IBM to address the report that they provided. The OCM schedule is written different and separate from the OMM schedule. We've linked our milestones, and so we've been able to review that schedule separately. The milestone tasks, we have several of the items listed above. There's fixed dates. Typically, most of those are fixed dates linked to the OMM schedule. For example, like the first line is where the OCM project links to the OMM project, because that's where the OCM project starts. Also where the OCM schedule and scope and strategy is set up, and that's something that was already completed in the past, so it's a fixed date that already happened, so it's not something that we would go back and link with another predecessor or something like that. Another comment that they made was we have 42 tasks over 160 hours, and so that's something that we'll start meeting with things like this with IB&B on a more regular basis to focus in on other opportunities we may be able to seize upon to optimize our OCM activities. So, that's the only comments on phase 1. and phase 2, we did a knowledge survey, but that's a phase 2 type of survey, and so those are the only things we had on phase 1, unless anybody had any questions or anything on phase 1. No? That's it for the OCM report. Thanks.
Were you, this is kind of off topic, but the phone number that we were given, the tax collectors, for that survey, I tried to call that several times and could never get a human being.
There were 2 phone numbers that went out, and so I don't know which number you're talking about. One was mine and one was for the training department. Do you know which number you were trying to call? I can follow up with you separately
It
on
was
that.
whatever was on the email that was sent to us with the, I tried to call it, and
Okay, yeah, I'll follow up with you on that then separately, just to see where.
that come from Sharon.
The one from Sharon? If it was the 3160, that would have been my phone.
So we should be able to deal with that email then.
Yeah,
Thanks
yeah.
for letting
changing it back to my direct line, but we did have it default to a bad phone number, and so if
And
it
I
didn't
have
make it out,
slept since then, but it did, when you would call it, you got into like a cycle that you couldn't get out of.
okay, so thanks for that comment, because we thought we had corrected that. And I did get quite a few phone calls that we were able to resolve, but that's the first we heard that bad phone number got out. So I'm glad you mentioned that, because as we go forward, we'll want to make sure that that's addressed. So, okay, good, thank you.
All right, thanks, Greg. Coral, update on the comms plan?
Okay, so our most recent comms plan covers March through August of 2019. It was approved at ESC last week. Some of the newer items in OCM, I'm sure Craig talked about the engagement planning. So that's going on through next month. They held a gardener culture hacking workshop on May 15th. And we're working with comms to develop resources for upcoming informational sessions, change champions. Currently, the SharePoint site is under review with OMM leadership. There was no updates for training since the last meeting. And then if you go down to the last page for the communications section, Andrea spoke about the MyDB portal focus groups. We're having Class E replacements and CDL replacements this Saturday, hosted by UF. And then they had the Department of Revenue tax collector training yesterday. And those are my updates.
Those are all the agenda items that we have today. Any other members of business from the advisory board members? Any questions from the public? All right, so hearing none, we will adjourn at 1:30.